Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Storied Arcs podcast. I am your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are covering Kill or Be Killed, Volume 3. Just another 4 issues, very short read compared to the last one and the next one. And again, as a reminder to all listeners, I am reading along with you. It was very hard to stop after this one.
Especially knowing the end is right there, too.
I know the end is right there. And the cover art for that one has been my favorite all along. I've had all 4 trades just sitting on my coffee table waiting to record the podcast. But I am reading in the trades edition. I would love the deluxe, like all-in-one edition, but it's like $150 online because there's only so many printed. You're reading single issue, right?
I'm rereading both. Well, I have single issue. This is the kind of book I have single issue floppies. I have the 4 trades, and at some point I bought these single issues digitally as well.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure that was probably like a sale, some like
it's like Black Friday
sale.
And they're 90 cents.
Or maybe it was like buy one get one free, or something like that. And so I think I basically got it for half price single issue digitally, and that's just the easiest way to go back and reread and flip through, so I don't have to dig through a long box and pull them out that way. So I am going through them single issue, but I also have the trades here as well, because I think as I mentioned, something that Brubaker Phillips do in their single issues, they put back matter material like letters pages, places where Brubaker just kind of talks back to the audience, and there's also like guest essays. Those are in the back of all the single issues, and they aren't in any of the collected issues. So it's just some extra stuff that they like to do. Usually it's not like 100% relevant to the issue at hand, but it's more just kind of thematically the kind of things that the series is talking about. Some of those issues, some of those guest essays, and like recommendations on like here's what I'm reading, what I'm watching, and there are also some hints on what their next projects are. So I like to go back and see those and reread some of that stuff to get some of the mindset that he was in as he was writing it, especially as we get further away from when it was first printed. So I like having that on hand.
Yeah, and in fact, 3 of the 4 artists we've covered on this series so far do that. Jeff Lemire is a big letter writer in the back of Gideon Falls and Royal City, and basically every creator-owned thing he's done, I've seen letters in the back, including mixtapes in Royal Cities. Not like one song, but like a whole mixtape for each issue, which was very cool. Brian K. Vaughan, big letter writer in the back of Saga, and Ed Brubaker, apparently, who I don't think I've ever owned in single issue. I've always been in collected edition. So anyway, all this to say, you have an advantage over me. Now, I have the advantage of I'm reading the trades, which they're nice and they're beautiful, but they're trades. I last night was reading it on the porch while smoking a cigar. I would never do that with a floppy issue, because there's a possibility that like a single issue would shoot up in value, or I would get it signed or something. But the trade, I don't really care about. I'm like, yeah, I'll buy them used. I'll buy them ex-library. They're banged up, whatever. They're trades. That's what they're for. Although I do know people who have pristine trade collections as well. But
there are some people that like that, yeah. But that single issue, though, the mindset changes.
It does for me. I mean, yeah. And I've even reconsidered lately, like, most of these are just, they're for me. They're not, I don't even know how to sell comics and make money. Like, I've never done that. I don't know how. I'm like, should I even bag and board anymore? Or should I just I could fit so many more in the box without it. But anyway, that's my mentality. And because of that, I don't have the letters in the back. And as I was watching college football yesterday, you texted me something from issue 12, I think.
Yeah.
Which is, I brought up in volume 1 how this reminded me of Death Note, which is one of the most famous manga anime series of all time. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great entryway into manga. And it's probably something that you can do to be ahead of the curve, because Netflix has gone kind of all in on their manga adaptations.
They're live action adaptations, right?
Yeah. So they stream the anime series, which is great. And that was original. Netflix didn't make that. They just have it in their possession now. They made a live action movie out of it, which was apparently a dud. And I can't even fathom how they could have fit all of that story into one movie. And now the Duffy brothers, who did Stranger Things, are doing a live action adaptation of Death Note. So that's just one of those stories that won't go away. It's like 20 years old now, and it still finds new currency, new relevance. And some of it is even based around technology in like 2003, 2004. So you would think some of that stuff would start to age poorly, but the characters and the storytelling are so good that you overlook some of those things. Anyway, I was saying, that's one where he picks up this notebook owned by a god of death, and he can write people's names, and it kills them and starts making himself a god by deciding who lives and dies and going after petty criminals. And he's got this, shadowy demon walking around behind him all the time. And the premise, if you believe the psychosis in volume 1, sounds a lot like that. It's like he's got this big shadowy horn demon behind him, and he's executing people. And the vigilante's name in Death Note is Kira, and that's the name of his girlfriend here. So it seemed like there were a lot of influences. That obviously wasn't trying to be a straight adaptation or anything like that, but maybe like, oh, this is a fun nod to people who have read Death Note. It sounds like he has not read Death Note.
Yeah, from the in issue 12 in the back, he talks about how he basically got 2 letters almost simultaneously from readers asking if Kill or Be Killed was inspired at all by Death Note. And he addresses both those by saying, Brubaker says he's aware of them but hasn't read it. I think he said he's seen like one episode of the anime after he had written the first issue, and so he can see the comparisons. Obviously, the one that he does say was he didn't know about the character named Kira, and if he had known that, he said he probably would have changed that, because I think that feels like it's a little on the nose, but that's just completely coincidental at that point. But the idea of the demon, or the central premise, the initial premise, at least, of Kill or Be Killed, the idea that a demon is haunting you or possessing you, and you have to do its bidding, and you're killing on behalf of that, and that's a fairly tropish setup. They're probably dozens of other things, and it's all about what you do after that. And like I say, from the sounds of Death Note, it sounds like the main character there kind of starts getting like drunk on power, thinking that there's now a god, can do what we can here, while you have Dylan in our story really kind of yo-yoing back and forth.
I mean, it's really,
with the idea
he's really like bipolar, because he even in this volume refers to Day Dylan as opposed to like Vigilante Dylan.
Yeah, he
sees it as 2 separate characters within him.
Yeah, he's struggling with the idea of is this actually real? How much is this in my head? Doesn't matter if it's real. Like, he's constantly battling with that idea of, can I ignore this thing? Am I really going to die if I don't kill someone every month? Is this demon really forcing me to do these things? Or, which is what I think we see in volume 3, am I doing this because I actually like it? Am I doing this for some other reason? Was the demon just an excuse for me to do something that maybe I would have done anyway? And I think we really see that in volume 3, as his, he tries to quit. He tries to stop doing this vigilante work. It's a very Michael Corleone, Godfather 3. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. He finds a way back into doing this, but it has nothing to do with satiating this demon that may or may not exist. He goes back into this life for a completely other reason, really different motivation, and he still finds a reason or an excuse or whatever you want to call it. He still finds a way back into this life, into being this vigilante, into doing the same thing he was doing before. It's just, his mindset around it has changed. And I think that's, it's an interesting way it's an interesting evolution of the character when we think about, I think, especially when we think about kind of the superhero work that especially Brubaker has done around vigilantes, whether we're talking about, Batman, Daredevil, whatever, any of these characters that are put on a mask and and go and fight crime or do whatever. It is,
which they're all, I mean, and for the most part, he writes street level people.
Yeah.
You know, Batman, Daredevil,
Yeah.
and like
he's most famous for those characters. Yeah.
Yes, and it's like he also has Captain America,
Yeah.
but in the pantheon of superheroes, Captain America is still somewhat grounded.
Yes, yeah,
you know, maybe not in the movies as much, but in his books, you know, he's kind of normal. In fact, I saw this this TikTok from a literature professor in college, and he makes they like study superheroes as a form of literature, and he had his class watch like the 1976 Superman movie, and his class was like, "This isn't a Superman movie," and he was like, "What are you talking about?" They were like, "All he's doing is like helping people. Why isn't where's the villain he's fighting?" And he was like, "No, this is what Superman is. Superman mostly just goes around and helps people, but like." In our, like, you know, all of our modern adaptations, it's always got to be against a big bad.
If it's not literally earth shattering, then it's
right.
not.
So even
not
Superman, who can literally do anything, was kind of like almost like a friendly neighborhood Superman, you know, back in the golden era.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting, and I think those make the best stories for me. Like, I don't find people with unlimited powers and abilities to be that compelling. I like someone who has to think through, like, okay, I'm going to go do this crazy thing in a warehouse. How do I get out of that after I go? Like, what's the escape route? And even like some of the more grounded Batman comics kind of take that stuff for granted. Whereas Killer Be Killed, he's laying, I mean, this whole trade is laying out a 3-step plan and then executing it.
Yeah, to take down the Russian, or not to take down the Russian mob, to at least get at the head of the Russian mob. Yeah.
Well, I think he thinks, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he thinks he is taking down the rest of them effectively by giving the cops the locations. He's like, this is your chance to go do anything at all. Come on, you know, Law and Order, do something for me.
Well, I don't know if he's not.
It wasn't explicit, but I thought surely that's why you would leave that for the cops.
He leaves that info on the roof. That's for the Russian mob there. So
they empty the house. Yeah.
Yeah. So they go and kind of, you know, go and protect the other brothels there. Because again, the assumption he wants them to make is that he's going after them for the sex trafficking and the brothels and the prostitution and all that, when all he wants to do is empty the security detail. But there is a sense of, because there was a large mass shooting at one of the locations, they can't hide that from the cops. You know, if he goes and kills one guy, the mob can cover that up. But if it's a half dozen guys, like it was in that initial attack, there's going to be increased pressure from the cops. And his goal is to go and I think maybe deep down he thinks, well, we have the pressure from the cops, even though he's aware that cops are on their payroll, because he was following their money courier everywhere. At some point, if there's so much profile, so much of a spotlight on them, they can't keep covering it up. And then if the big boss goes down, that maybe not they go away, but at least they're crippled and they probably get off his back. I think that's what his end goal is. I don't think he thinks they're going to be out of the picture entirely, but he's at least going to be safe. That, like, you know, I got to you, you can leave me alone now. I think that's what I think his mindset, and that's a little pie in the sky, I think. But again, sure, the plan he executes though is pretty flawless, and it's definitely
very clever. Yeah,
compared to the kind of last time we saw him make a plan with the guy he's supposed to be tailing, who's jogging in the park or whatever, when he's just like out there,
or accidentally shooting a stripper in the stomach. Yeah, I mean, it's compared to his past work, this is his magnum opus.
Yeah, this is way better, and it gives you a thought of like, well, okay, if he really kind of puts his mind to it, because but I think part of that also is, it's before we get to that, you know, we start in the first issue there, 11. As he's trying to quit, what has he done? Well, he's back on his correct meds. He's back at therapy. He's back at school. And so he is free in some way of the demon that he thinks that he's, again, still not certain if is real or not, but he thinks maybe kind of chemically in his brain he's maybe a little more stable now. He has an awareness of yes, what he did was wrong, but he is trying to quit, but he is kind of mentally, I think he's in a better spot. He believes he's in a better spot. And yet when he's put in a position where he thinks he has to go after the mob, he still does it. And apparently he, with a clear mind, can concoct and execute like a near flawless plan to reach his end goal. So
right.
Again, so you bring into question now, maybe it's not, and it's nothing. Maybe it's got nothing to do with the demon. Maybe this is just something that he's good at. Maybe it's something he wants to do. And what was clouding him before was the being on the wrong meds and maybe the mental imbalance. That wasn't what was causing him to see the demon. Maybe that was causing him to not be very good at this. Maybe causing him to wait in the bathroom of the cafe and not have an escape route, just jump up, aside from jumping out the window. That maybe it has nothing to do with the demon at all. Maybe it's just, when he gets his mind right, he's actually talented at this. This is actually something he's good at. And which is kind of a frightening thought. And it's not one that gives Dylan a whole bunch of pause, but I think as a reader, you look at it and I think you start questioning, maybe not, you're maybe to start thinking differently about his motivation and why he was actually doing all of this to begin with. Because again, we don't see the demon at all. The demon doesn't appear to him, until the very end of the trade. So it's not even a presence here in terms of why he's doing what he's doing.
Not consciously. Yeah.
Yeah. He's thinking about it. And obviously he has that kind of sojourn up to his mom's again, because he's now trying to investigate, why is this demon showing up in my dad's paintings and why don't I remember seeing it? Because he tells himself, like, I had to have seen it, right? Because I looked through all of my dad's stuff. Why don't I remember this? So it's more of an abstract thing. I'm saying the demon right manifesting in his mind when he's seeing it, or I guess maybe more importantly, hearing the voice, because the demon would talk to him. As we talked about,
let's not forget in volume 1, the demon was hitting him and physically hurting him too. I mean, it's like, this that really felt like a Fight Club moment, though. At least to me, I've always read it that way. It does. It certainly does. The further we go, but I think, in the first issue or two, it was enough to make the concept plausible of oh, perhaps this is a demon, and that's the type of genre and story we're in, which would be a departure for Brubaker, but. It'd be a little more it'd be a little more supernatural. It'd be a little more going into like the Fatale territory, where it's more explicitly supernatural horror. But here, as we now in volume 3, it's very much meant to be grounded, because I think you're supposed to question at all times what is Dylan actually seeing or hearing when he sees and hears the demon. You're supposed to question that because he's questioning it at all times. So it is meant to be more grounded. But you are right. You have to set the premise up being that this plausibly could be actually happening, right? You have to actually, at least for the first trade. To start off with, initially those first couple issues, you, like Dylan, Dylan has to believe it's real, and the reader has to accept that it could be real. You have to immediately say Dylan is worth following. Meaning you have to grant, you can't dismiss it out of hand. That's all you need. You don't need everyone thinking this demon is real, but you have to say, well, our character believes it's real and our character is interesting. So let's follow his journey. And we finally caught up, by the way, to where we start at the beginning of trade 1. Yeah. The very first opening pages. Yep. Which it sounds like, my understanding in volume 1 was that is the present time, and he's flashing back in his mind and telling all of this. Obviously, the narration style is very explicit that he is speaking to someone particular, not it's not fourth wall breaking. This is not I don't think it's like in She-Hulk where he's looking at the reader saying, Oh yeah, and this is the part where I'm a really bad narrator for you. I think he's communicating this to another person in his world.
I can see that. Oh, I don't know if it's explicitly like that. I always read it as he simply knows there's someone listening.
Okay.
But I don't know.
So is okay. So
Yeah.
I was like, if this ends with him like on a therapist's couch in a straitjacket, and this whole story has been told to the therapist, he's being awfully candid. It seems like he will have a version of events to tell a psychiatrist that either makes him sound insane, sympathetic, or innocent. And I, just based on the cover art that I see coming, I feel pretty certain there's going to be some confrontation with a mental institution for him. So, I'm curious to see how that plays out. But so we've talked about his 3-part plan. Very good, especially as far as this goes. And I can't remember. I think we just talked about this before we started recording. But again, and this is another media comparison I thought of was like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, which in my defense, I've only seen once. I saw it in the theater. I thought it was like fine. But, it was like really well acted, but didn't really have anything to say and was pretty forgettable. But the main takeaway from that movie was to try to make the Joker a somewhat sympathetic character by saying, like, see, the world is terrible to him. He thinks he's doing a good thing. And after he kills those people on the subway, look how much he becomes happy and he becomes comfortable in his own skin and he really becomes himself. And that was really all it seemed to have to say as a movie, other than like, look how cool this is. Whereas here we see, he kills some people and then immediately wakes up in a bed with Daisy in volume 2. Here he kills some people. He wakes up in bed with Kira. And in the middle of like between steps 2 and 3 of his plan, he finally tells off his roommate and like grows a spine. Now, that being said, I think this roommate is an absolute snake. I think that's going to be a really bad idea in hindsight, pissing that guy off when he has access to your room and all your stuff.
It felt good for Dylan.
It's cathartic. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, Dylan, not a really good person. Mason, also not really a good person, but for like different sorts of reasons.
He's like an everyday, not a good person. Yeah. Dylan is like a notorious worldwide criminal.
Yeah. But no, definitely. Him and Mason is not a good dude, which is, he Dylan, I think, fairly lays out the reasoning why, like when he starts dating Kira and all that, kind of out from under Dylan or whatever it is. He's not entirely wrong in terms of his criticism. Is he pretty harsh about it? Yeah, I think he is. But there is this idea that doing this work, this vigilante work, is what allows Dylan to reach his
becomes his truest
potential.
Self.
Yeah.
Which really makes you question that advice in the zeitgeist when everyone's like, you gotta need to become you gotta look inside and become your truest self. It's like, that's not actually a good idea for everyone.
Exactly.
The Dahmers and Unabombers of the world
maybe problematic.
Would probably think level. They were becoming their truest selves. Or most authentic selves or whatever. So anyway,
I think what we see, Dylan understands that, like, I think he understands that he may not be the best person because killing people he understands is wrong, but he does believe he's doing the right thing, So whether or not he thinks he is a good guy or a bad guy, I don't think. Maybe he thinks he's a good guy but a bad person, but I think he's starting to accept that, because here, the reason he gets back in is because that one kind of Russian mobster comes to the cafe looking for Kira, and Dylan happens over here, and so now he knows that, oh wait, the Russians have my name, Dylan. They have Kira's name. They know we're connected. They know what neighborhood we live in. They know where Kira works. They found that out. they're going to come after me. And now it's not just me, it's now people I care about. And, you know, now we've ventured into the very tropey hands of kind of mainstream superhero comics. You know, the hard things about,
although he straight up rejects it. He's like, it's not some caveman type thing, but it kind of is.
But there is the idea of, because he's not wrong, if Kira had been working the cafe that day, or at any point when a Russian guy walks in, she probably dies, or is at least kidnapped and tortured and led to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think they kill her on the spot. I think they want to use her to get to him.
She's in danger. I think that's a
for sure.
read.
Yeah,
100% correct read. But it's the idea of, if you put on a mask and you go fight bad guys, the bad guys are going to come back at you. And Dylan doesn't have a whole lot of people in his life that he really cares about. It's probably just his mother and Kira at this point, probably. But still, that's what draws him back in. It's not the demon. It's not the, oh wait, it's the end of the month, I got to kill somebody. It's now self-preservation for both him and someone he cares about. But even after that, you know, after he does that first part of his plan where he tails and kidnaps the money courier for the Russian mob, when he gets info out of him, he realizes that no one else knew about Kira. That was just something that the guy he stabbed knew. So Kira's actually off the hook now. So now it's just self-preservation of himself. The mob still knows they're looking for a guy named Dylan, and yet he still goes through with this plan. So it's like the book starts, and his motivation to go out and be this vigilante is because he thinks he's beholden to this demon. And then he gets over that. And then for a moment, it's, well, I got to protect the people around me. I got to protect Kira.
Well, and now it's the killer protecting Dylan himself.
Yeah. But now his motivation is just, well, like, these are bad people and they're coming after me, so I got to keep doing this now. But I think there's build up there. You hear in some of that narration as he's gearing up for that final assault on the big boss's house there. Or maybe it's just as he's gearing up for his big part of master plan. There's that narration about his father trying to start his own art studio, and some mob guys, not necessarily Russian, but some mob guys who control whatever, kind of roughing him up and kind of not letting him do the thing that his dad wanted to do. There's an anger that the world was against his father and thus against him. So his motivation now is like, these people in charge, these mobsters, the people who run things. There's an anger lashing out at society building up in him that maybe was always there. We see that in some of his narration. We see that in the kind of crazy manifesto letter he sends to the newspaper, you know, where he says that he kind of plays it up to for effect, but he still admits that some parts of that are true. The idea that, you know, the haves just constantly rain down on the have-nots. But his motivation by the time he's going in and charging at the Russians, like, he's doing this because he feels he has to. It's got nothing to do with the demon, nothing to do with protecting Kira. And
well, he has to, and he wants to.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Right. His ego is wrapped up in it.
It's less of, at that point, by the time he actually gets there, it's less about, well, I'm doing this to protect myself because they're never going to stop coming after me. By the time he gets there, he's so amped up. It's just like, I have to do this. I want to do this because these people deserve justice, and I'm going to give it to them. So he's now gone completely around the bend now, where he is now just a full vigilante with, you know, just the guy taking the law into his own hands with no other kind of outside force motivating him other than, this is the right thing to do and I'm going to do it. You know, he's moved completely away from what the quote unquote premise was at the beginning. And this dude is just a regular guy put in this situation who now believes that he can go out and take care of these bad guys, quote unquote bad guys, because I'm the only one that can do it. I have a plan. They deserve it, and I can give it to them. I can give him this justice. And I think that's an interesting character turn for him. And it's a setup for how the series is going to wrap up. That's a light spoiler there, but the idea of what his motivation is, what Dylan's motivation is as to why he would want to keep doing this, is important to see, and it's important turn here.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm wondering, as someone who's not yet read the conclusion, if he eventually realizes that he is becoming a happier Dylan when he has this, release valve of killing people. He's more confident with women. He's more assertive with his roommate. He's worse at school. I will give him, he's got the Peter Parker syndrome, falling behind at school because of his vigilanteism. To make a hard pivot here, early on, he goes and sees his psychiatrist. Yeah. Which first time we've met this guy, right?
I think so. Yeah. But the implication I always read was that this was the guy he had been seeing before, maybe,
yes.
or had seen at some point.
Well, I actually want to prod deeper. He's really old looking.
Oh.
I'm wondering if it is possible that this man treated Philip and his father and knows the family medical history.
Oh, it might. Well, I get the sense that it's possible. Maybe Philip. I get the sense that Dylan's father probably didn't go to therapy.
Yeah, that generation was very skeptical.
Probably not. I don't know. It's entirely possible because we do get at the end when Kira sees the Philip's file there,
right.
his psychiatrist file. So it's possible. I got the sense that this was someone that Dylan may have gone to in the past, because he had he had attempted suicide back in college a few years before. So, this is something he has dealt with in his past. I never thought about the Philip angle. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, clearly this guy has a pretty good sense of what is wrong with Dylan and what to watch out for.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is no psychiatrist can help you if you're not honest with them.
Yeah.
If Dylan was going to this man immediately and saying, this horned demon appeared to me, said I have to kill people or he's going to kill me, and I started getting sick, I think it's true. Up his meds, knock him out, whatever. Whatever they would have to do, the whole thing could have been prevented. And, the demon starts to slowly reemerge, even though at the beginning of this trade, he is outright denial of it. And the final panel, I just love the poetry of how they've broken down these trades, because 6464 seems weird, right?
It does, yeah.
Or is it four? Whatever.
It's
4646.
4646, yeah. But light, heavy in terms of the reading, yeah.
Right, but every last page ends with the demon.
Yeah,
and I'm really hoping the final panel of the series is the demon on some enigmatic note. I would just love that. I feel like there's no way they can deny me that at this point. But I've noticed the big difference here. The final page of this volume, though, what's wrong, Dylan? He's becoming more anthropomorphic. He's got, white arms, his sleeves are rolled back. He's wearing a suit, it looks like, or a coat and jeans.
That's
him projecting
on Kira's body.
Right.
That's what Kira's wearing in the pages before there. So
yes, it is. So now he's seeing this overlaid on other people.
Yeah, it's reappearing right there because that bombshell of the psychiatrist report that his half brother Philip was seeing.
Oh, I would love the rest of that information though, because again, and this is a brilliant one. As his narration box starts playing, you can see the text swiped away and erased
from Kira's. Yeah.
Very much like my favorite panel in volume 2.
Yes. Yeah. And then a blank
panel back immediately after. Yes.
It says, he's zoning out there because, one thing you talked about was the idea of, we just mentioned Dylan coming to his full self there as he's doing this. So he starts this trade-off saying, I quit. I'm going to done. And then he goes through this whole machinations with the Russian mob. And then as he's laying on the bed there, his narration is like, but what if I didn't quit? What if I kept doing this? What I could make it work, right? And he's getting lost in that as Kira starts reading the Philip psychiatrist report. And that's when her text goes away, like it happened with Daisy in volume 2. But it's only when she says the word having delusions does he snap out of it. you know, and
Right.
now he has it. Now he doesn't know where they are in the conversation because he hasn't been listening, but all he heard was that little bit, and that snaps him to of like, whoa, no, what'd you just read? What was that? You know, and you get the bombshell that ends there, that ends the volume. But yeah, there's the it's a great little callback there of we see him. Okay, he's now lost in his own thoughts. I mean, as in that this is the most important thing because he's really thinking about it in that moment. Could I keep doing this? And again, now it has his motivation now is completely different. He's now thinking about doing it because you know what? Like he talks about, aside from accidentally killing Rex, he doesn't feel bad about any of them, you know?
No, and now he's looking for a reason not to, rather than looking for a way out.
Yeah.
He's looking for a way in.
Yeah, he's no longer at this point. That changes in about 4 seconds, but as he's laying there, he's not thinking the demon's making me do this. The demon's gone. I don't believe the demon's real. Who cares about that? I got the Russian mob off my back now. They're not coming after me. He believes that. I don't need them anymore. I took care of that. But maybe I still want to keep doing this because apparently I'm good at it. So yeah, I'm looking for a way. How can I make this work? You know, yeah, it's going to be a double life. Maybe I got to be more careful about it. You know, pick my targets there, maybe less hype, whatever it is. He's seriously contemplating doing this for real and actually being this mass vigilante because he's choosing to do it. And if it weren't for Kira reading that report and him coming to the realization that maybe this demon that, you know, his half brother Philip, who he never met, saw it. His father shortly afterwards started drawing it in his paintings and Philip took his own life. His dad took his own life. And now here's Dylan. You know, if it weren't for this pattern there, maybe he would have gone on and just been a mass vigilante. You know, he would have kept doing that. But the demon is ever present. That idea of whether it's real or not, he now believes at the very least it's like genetic, you know, it's
for sure.
It's a family trauma now. So yeah. So now it is once again less important. Is the demon real or not? Is it actually happening? What is now important is that 3 people in his family have seen it. So whether they, right. So it's real in that they're all seeing the same thing. And that's to Dylan in that moment. I think it's real enough for him, which is why when it manifests over Kira, that's like this whole house of cards crumbling down and being like, oh crap, you know, if we're all seeing the same thing, then it on some level, it has to be real. It's real enough to us because it's
I mean that's
afflicting all of us.
Yeah, it's I'm not going to get into I think it was St. Anselm's ontological argument for the existence of things. I think it was like the notion of a perfect island. No, that's never mind. I'd have to go way back through my philosophy books, but there was basically an argument of, in order for us to talk about a thing, it must exist in some form. It doesn't have to be real in the sense that you and I are. We could say that Santa Claus does not actually exist as in terms of a person, but he exists in a shared concept in our minds. When you and I speak of Santa Claus, we both have a mental image and we can converse about him despite him not being a real person. So there has to be certain degradations of what is real.
What is real? Sure. Yeah.
And,
I think
and so it is, the demon is real in some sense, but it is not a fantasy story, with demons and centaurs and things like that. It's,
but this entity is real enough to them because they're all seeing it. It's a shared experience that impacts reality. Yeah. Therefore it has some sense of realness to it. I mean, some of the art around the demon is just incredible. Like the one where he's sitting in his college class, looking at the picture of the woman looking into a mirror and the demon hovering over it. That would have been a great cover, I cannot believe the level of work that Sean Phillips puts into something that just takes up, a quarter of a page. And by the way, the most Sean Phillips panel here, like the one that I saw it and I was like, if I didn't know anything about this book, I would say this is Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. It's the second issue in this trade, and it's the second page, 4th panel.
um, where you've got the first Russian guy in the blue suit with his hands up saying, "Wait, wait." To me, that looks like a cover from a criminal book. Issue 12, page 2, panel 4. Just the way he has that framed with them in opposite corners, hands up, don't shoot, wait, wait, and the shotgun pointed at him. And in the back of my trades is a cover gallery.
That'd be sorry. It's issue 13. That's
13. Okay.
The third. Yeah. Okay. I see.
13, page 2, panel 4.
Yeah.
Kind of an iconic look for a Sean Phillips character.
And
I just thought, oh, that's such a good summary. But also,
that is very criminal. You're very right. That's
an incredible level of detail.
Yeah.
Through the sketching, the inking, and the coloring. And this book has a defined color palette, I would say. It's hard to describe. We spent a lot of time on this in Paper Girls. We spent less time on it here. But it is desaturated.
Yeah, definitely.
In such a, to make it feel gritty. And just last night we were watching the first Matrix movie. My wife has never seen it, so it's a real treat for me to go back through a classic like that. And anytime they're in the Matrix, they have it stylized with that heavy green hue on everything, as if you're seeing it through the code.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, that's kind of conceptually cool, but now looking back on it, they overdid it just a touch. When I see things that are overly stylized, it's like, if you could have just pulled it back 10% and let it be there for those who notice it, but not be right up in everybody's face with it all the time.
But in that 99, then we're going to do that.
No, but I'm not complaining about the Matrix. Still 5 stars in my opinion.
But I think you're right though about the colors in this book here. Yeah, it is very desaturated, and then there are. I think there's a reason why he wears, a red ski mask. It tends to pop out on the page very distinctly. A lot of the book happens at night or in darkness or in shadow. That's kind of the vigilante thing. So he's kind of wearing, dark jeans or black jeans, a dark hoodie. He's got black gloves on, all this stuff, and yet he's wearing this bright red mask. And so there's a bit of a dichotomy there. But
there are only 3 red things in the book. It is his mask, blood, and Kira's hair.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting trifecta there.
Yeah, and then there really aren't a whole lot of other bright colors. There are very few extended scenes in the daytime. There are some in the second chapter, in the second volume, I guess, when him and Daisy kind of go for meals or whatnot, and that second. And that I guess that'd be his the banker that he goes and kills in the cafe. That's like a noontime kill, which I think, how badly that ends up getting botched, I think is reflective on maybe he should have stuck to the nighttime. The fact that he's trying to shoot this guy in a busy cafe in the middle of the day in the bathroom.
That was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Just everything about that was
not well thought out. Not well thought out, but so much of this, specifically this one as well, this third volume, so much of it happens at night. And yes, it is very desaturated. There's sometimes, maybe there's a blue hue or kind of maybe like almost like a neon, reds and yellows that you can tell, like some of those scenes in the bar when you really get the sense that it's low light anyway, but what light there is coming from like a half dozen neon lights on the wall,
right.
So there's kind of a weird filter over it. And you really feel that in the scenes, in the panels and the pages. I think also when he goes undercover at the Russian strip club, everything's kind of got like
which, by the way, does that
pinkish...
really remind you of Steve Carell going to the strip club in Big Short? Where it's like the stripper thinks he's there for the stripping, and he's just pumping her for information, trying to figure something else out. Like everything she's doing as part of her job is like, he's like, yeah, I don't care about that. Tell me about this other thing.
Yeah. Whatever. Never mind. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But they're these different environments there, that they just have the right feel. And this color isn't really flashy. And that's part of, I think, what, what works with kind of whoever's coloring Sean Phillips' works. Like here, it's Elizabeth Breitweiser. Currently, it's his son Jacob. There is there's very much a mood and atmosphere set with the colors. You know, they're not as maybe as evocative as like we see in Paper Girls, or thematic where things are color coded. You know,
Yeah,
so much.
It's not regiment. Color coded is the right word.
Yeah.
Because like Paper Girls
color coded. It was
is
intentional,
telling narrative through their coloring.
I think what they're doing here is, and there's something I think maybe I didn't mention. There was in the Zero episode, something that Betty Breitweiser talked about was tapping into like color psychology and picking things that evoke certain thoughts and emotions, maybe when paired together or when shown in a certain order or sequence. And I think you get that out of this book because it's all about vibes. It's all about mood and feel and atmosphere. And you can tell just, again, if you took all the words out and just looked at the art, the fully colored art, I think you would get. I think you could track a lot of Dylan's mindset, just based on the art and how it's colored. Whether it's a little darker, a little brighter, which colors are accented. It tends to be colored a little differently. And I think it's very subtle, but it's colored slightly different when he is, in his vigilante mode, and then maybe when he's not and he's spending time with Kira, or like when he's spending time with Daisy. It's colored differently when he's home. Things like that. I think you can tell his mood based on what choices they make with the color going throughout. And I think it's pretty clear here as he's trying to work his way out of being a vigilante, but drawn back in. You see those different sides of him, and that comes through on the page.
Yeah. And I'm glad we got to take a little victory lap there for Sean Phillips, because I think in such a narrative heavy book, it's very easy to just go story, and forget about the medium in which the story is being told. That would be like watching a movie and talking about the mind-bending plot without talking about the acting and the cinematography and
how the
special
camera
effects and
work
everything
moves
else.
and all that stuff.
And that's all in the head of Sean Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't know if in the deluxe editions, if you ever get to see a Brubaker script. I like when they throw scripts in, because I love to see and just imagine the collaboration, which we talked a little bit in our interview with Hillary Jenkins about. What do they give you to work with? And it's a high level of trust, especially in repeat collaborations.
Well, and that's the thing. I really wonder at this level, especially at this point, between Brubaker and Phillips, because I said this was the sixth official collaboration between the two. So at that point, like, how much do you need to be said? Like, say, I really do wonder what Brubaker's scripts look like, because he on some level has to just know, like, I don't know what Sean's going to do here, but I know he's going to do something great. So maybe I just give him room on this page to flex. I just give him, here's the dialogue and the action, but I'm not telling him how to panel it, how to lay it out.
I mean, I'd be inclined to give a guy like Sean Phillips, especially after 6 books, I'd be like, okay, here are the words they say. You know what to do with it. Yeah.
Well, and they
get out of the way.
I think I mentioned this in the first, in volume 1. They like to keep, and I think this is a choice they make. They like to keep to the basically three rows per page. They like a top, middle, bottom, 3 sections per page, and they divide that up however they kind of wish. But there is very much just 3 rows across each page. That's they seem to like that story, that storytelling kind of breakdown. Knowing that
right.
there's going to be almost like, kind of, your setup, your middle, your punchline, whatever it is. They know that they're always going to break it down that way. And I think that's something that I'm sure they've discussed long ago and decided that this works best for the way we tell our stories. And then they can break it down like those, in the Kira focus issue in the last arc, those were, 2 panels per row. So that 6 per page,
right?
They could do that, or maybe you just have a full splash page across 1/3 of those, or you break them down into 2, or however it is, but it still works in that top, middle, bottom as you're working down the page. So it's probably at some point they don't even discuss that in their scripts. I'd have to imagine they just know it's going to be broken down that way. So it's all about what information you want to present in the on each page, what characters they are. And I would imagine you can let Brubaker can let Phillips just kind of work, because he knows whatever it is, it's going to be good. Like, I can't imagine ever getting a page back and being like, what, that didn't really work. Right. At their level of collaboration, you just implicitly trust. I'm going to tell him a lot. I'm going to tell him a little. Either way, I'm going to get something that's probably better than what I was thinking, you know? And that's that's got to be a real joy, knowing that you can trust the guy you're working with. You trust your collaborators. You work with them so much that you just put it out there, and you're going to get something back that's going to be greater than probably.
It's going to be someone who understands the story and he can even augment it, which I think the epitome of that would be the volume 2 therapy scene with Kira.
Yeah.
Where, could have framed that all as just back and forth bubbles with two of them sitting on a big splash page. Could have without doing the inversion or the blank bubble. Any number of things where it was just like, no, he knew exactly what to do.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that that's one of those pages, set of pages specifically. I'd love to see what the script looked like. Because was it like, did they decide early on, let's do these tight headshots back and forth, or was it just the dialogue and the layouts are left to the artist all themselves? I'm so curious about stuff like that, because you wonder, because there are so many other ways you can do that, and they're all effective in their own way. They all work, but it's about maybe what the choices work for the story that you're telling, and those tight headshots alternating back and forth. I think it was really great. So Sean Phillips is phenomenal. It's why he's a multiple-time Eisner Award winner. It's why he gets nominated all the time. And the work that he had been doing in this kind of middle portion of their career, with Betty Breitweiser on the color, it turns out this is just some real magic, some real good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's about all I have for this trade. I'm saving a lot of final thoughts for the conclusion, which I still don't know yet. But anything else you want to touch on volume 3 before we sign off and see people next week?
I don't think so. I think the main thing I really think is important about this arc is Dylan's motivation. I think that's the big thing they're trying to get at here, because that in terms of a non-spoiler setup for the final arc, it is why he is really doing this. Did it have anything to do with the demon? Was the demon just the starting point? Is he doing it because he feels he has to, or because he wants to, because he likes it, because he needs it? What is his driving force? Why is he actually doing this? What revelation has he come to? And by the end of this volume 3, he hasn't quite come to it yet, because he was starting to, and then the bombshell about Philip and the demon kind of derails all that. But in terms of where we're going to go towards the end here, I think that's the focus of what is his actual motivation, what is driving him to do this and to have done it. What's the real crux of his being, that, is he just a psychopath? Is he really a good guy who just happens to be good at killing people? And that's why he's choosing to do it the quote unquote right way. It's an examination of that vigilante mindset, outside of the this demon is doing it. If I don't do it, I'm going to die. It's not self-preservation. He's doing it because he wants to be a vigilante. Is that really why he's doing it?
Right. And frankly, you couldn't have written that original premise any further now that we realize he has mental issues on medication, right?
Yeah.
Like that would no longer be interesting to say, oh, Dylan's killing people because the demon told him to, when we now know that the demon isn't, real.
I agree. You can't go the other way. You set it up being that some outside force is motivating him. And now we've shifted away for now Dylan believes, well, there's something there with this demon, but that's not why I'm doing this. I don't think it is. I'm doing it because it's real. Yeah. If you start the other way of him being like, I'm a vigilante, I'm going to do this stuff, I'm going to kill these people, kill these bad people. And then the reveal is, oh, wait, you've been doing it for a demon this whole time. I think that feels kind of cheap, right? That feels like the rug is pulled out underneath you there. That
that violates one of the sacred rules of like storytelling, which is like your protagonist cannot be passive.
Yeah.
Like you can't just have things, they can't sit back and let things happen to them. They have to be the ones initiating action.
Yeah.
And if he was just a puppet of the demon, then the demon's the protagonist.
Yeah. And if he's a puppet of the demon and that isn't revealed until issue 13, 14 or something like that out of 20, if that was revealed at the end of volume 3, that, oh no, he's been under the thumb of this demon, that's why he's doing all this. I think that can feel kind of cheap. I think you've got to be truly excellent as a storyteller in your setup to make that not feel cheap. But when you start it that way and saying this is what his motivation is, but then shift out of that into now him taking more agency to it, and when he takes more agency in his life, he's still going out and killing people. I think that speaks more about his character and who he is and what he's made of than if it's, oh, it was the demon the whole time. That's not as interesting to me, at least. I don't think to you either.
No, I agree. 100%.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't wait to see how this ends. As soon as we sign off, I'm going to start reading volume 4. For you guys, it will be a week, no matter what, unless you're listening to this months later, in which case you can listen to us again in 10 seconds. But thank you for listening thus far. We are super excited to wrap up the conclusion of this. And just as a heads up, if you're listening in real time, we will be finishing Kill or Be Killed next week, and then we'll be following it up with Mark Russell's Flintstones, which is going to be an extremely different tone. I don't think it's really going to be more family friendly. No, to be clear, the podcast, I think, has always been pretty family friendly. We get into some heavier topics that a kid might get bored with, but we're not nearly as vulgar as the books we're reading.
Yeah, Kill or Be Killed's pretty
at least
mature.
Not in our presentation here.
No, well, Flintstones is it's family friendly, and it isn't like it's like they've taken the Flintstones and made them like
Scott Snyder or Zack Snyder.
Yeah. But there are some. It deals with some heavier, weightier topics about like. It's very existential in terms of dealing with life and society and things like that. But it is a hard turn. It is a hard turn from Kill or Be Killed. I cannot wait to finish to finish Kill or Be Killed. I think Mike, I really can't wait for you to get there to see what how you feel about how it wraps up and how it ends. And then we'll take a pretty hard turn into Mark Russell and Steve Pugh's Flintstones comic, which should be a fun juxtaposition after this pretty heavy Brubaker and Phillips mass vigilante fable tale.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, you can find us at storiedarcs.com, Spotify, iTunes, Pocket Cast, wherever you want to listen, or even on the website. Instagram, we are Storied Arcs. Facebook, there is the Storied Arcs group. Twitter, Storied Arcs. Podcast or Storied Arcs? Either way.
Storied Arcs.
Yeah, you search Storied Arcs, you'll find us. And if you come back here next week, you'll find us again. Thanks for listening.
Peace.